Hello, my name is Dr. Ron Darnell, and welcome to this video about measures of central tendency in statistics. At the end of the session, you will be able to define common measures of central tendency, describe the purpose and use of central tendency measures, and discuss the benefits of using common measures of central tendency. In this module, we're looking at the measures of central tendency that provide us with statistical information about a set of data. The three primary measurements we use are the mean, median, and mode. Each of these measurements can provide us with information about our data set. This information can then be used to define how the points of data are connected. Choosing the best measure of central tendency depends on the type of data you have. In this video, we'll explore and introduce these measures of central tendency. In future videos, we'll learn how to calculate them in much more detail. The first and most important measure of central tendency is the mean, which is also known as the average. The mean is the arithmetic average, which we'll cover in more detail in the next section, and it is probably the measure of central tendency which you are most familiar. Calculating the mean is very simple. You add up all the values in your data set and divide that sum by the number of items in your data set. The mean uses every value in the data set and hence is a good representation of the data set. The irony is that most of the time this value never appears in the raw data since it's a calculated number. And since it is a calculated number and the mean incorporates all the values in the data set, if you change any value in the data set, the mean of the data set changes. However, the mean does not always locate the center of the data accurately. If we observe the histograms on the left, where I display the mean in two distributions, in a symmetric distribution, the mean locates the center accurately. However, in a skewed distribution, the mean can miss the mark. In the histogram, the one on the bottom left, it starts to fall outside of the central area. This problem occurs because outliers have a substantial impact on the mean. Extreme values can extend the tail and pull the mean away from the center. As the distribution becomes more skewed, the mean is drawn further and further away from the center. Consequently, it's best to use mean as a measure of the central tendency when you have a symmetric distribution. Let's take a look at an example. We want to know the normal length of time it takes a student to graduate from the BBA in Business program. And we have the data that's in the table on the right. From this data set, we can determine that 11.6 or 12 semesters or sessions is the average length of time it takes a student to graduate. If 4 sessions a year are offered, I can estimate that it would take me about 3 years to graduate. Let's take a look at median. Median is the middle value. It's the value that splits the data set in half. The median value is the point where 50% of the observations are above and 50% are below. The simplest way to find the median in a data set is to order the data from smallest to largest, and then find the point that is equal amount of the values are above it and below it. The method for calculating the median varies slightly depending on whether you have an even or odd number of values, and I'll show you how to find the median for both cases in a future video. So let's go back and look at our exploration of how long it takes to complete the BBA in Business program. To further analyze the student graduation data, we want to know the median, the middle point of the data, the number of semesters it will take to graduate. From the data set, we determine that 12 semesters or sessions is also the median number of time it takes students to graduate. Knowing the median informs us on how typical the mean is. Since the mean and the median both equal 12, we know we have a symmetric distribution and that the mean is a good representation of the typical length of time it takes to complete the BBA in Business program. Now let's look at mode. Mode is the value that occurs most frequently in the data set. On a bar chart, mode is the highest bar. When the data have multiple values that tie for occurring most often, you have a multimodal distribution. If no values repeat, then the data does not have a mode. And we'll discuss these two situations in a future video. In the data set above, the value 5 occurs most frequently, which makes it the mode. Now, back to our student example. To further analyze the student graduation data, we want to know the mode, the most frequent number of semesters it takes. From the data, we can determine that 13 semesters or sessions are the most frequent number of semesters it takes for students to graduate. Knowing the mode also informs us on how typical the mean is. And in this case, it's most likely that it will take 13 sessions to graduate, at least 12, but could take 13 sessions to graduate. Measures of central tendency indicate where the center point or a typical average value of a data set. These numbers indicate where most values in a distribution fall. In other words, the central location of a distribution. You can think of central tendency as the propensity of data to cluster around a middle value. In statistics, the three most common measures of central tendency are mean, median, and mode. And each of these measures calculates the location of the central point using a different method. Choosing the best measure of central tendency depends on the type of data you have. In this session, we defined the common measures of central tendency in statistics. We discussed the purpose and use of central tendency measures, and we discussed the benefits of using measures of central tendency in business. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.